Right, we are recording. We are recording. All right, let's do this. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take care of our domain name. That's what we didn't get done on Tuesday. So we should have, if you haven't already done so, don't worry. You still have time to purchase a domain name. So what I'm going to do right now is get the custom domain name pointed at our CodePen project. Okay, so right now you're looking at this domain name that I use for Web1, right? Manikoff at XYZ. And if we go to it right now, it might point to the old site. Good, it's down. Okay, and what we want to do is take this custom domain name and point it to the, to CodePen. And now this isn't immediate. And if it shows up in the time that we have lecture, great. And if it doesn't show up in the time that we have lecture, that's called propagation. And all these changes take time to make. One of the things we do in industry is we do not launch stuff on a Monday morning. We try to launch stuff like over the weekend, really, really late at night in case something breaks, because there's a lot of moving parts. Okay. And so if you have a client or you have a project and you want to launch it on your birthday, you might want to launch it a couple of days before your birthday just to make sure you iron out all the kinks, right? So pro tip here, okay, believe me, yeah, get that all set up. I've had to do stuff over New Year's. So trust me, like you want to get this set up. All right, so what I did was you have a domain name and there should be all these records in here. And all I did was I went through and I just went and I selected each record and I deleted it. And every time you create a domain name, there are records. So what I'm gonna do right now is show you, okay, the other domains. So here's the Eastern site, and here under the DNS tab, okay, is the domain name for these. Now, when I show this video, I'm going to block out all of this info, all of these numbers, because these are not things I want to show to the internet, right? But things I want to show to the class. So this is pointed to a specific location. So if we actually, type in that value, so this is kind of like 1-800-Flowers. What's the number for 1-800-Flowers? 1-800, right? Wherever the F is on your keyboard, you know, or on your keypad, and the L is on your keypad. Okay. And that's the same thing. Each website basically has what's called an IP address, right? And this is there's 6, well, this is IP4 because there's 4 sets of numbers. Nowadays, there's something called IP6. You don't have to worry about that for this class. Okay. And everyone's got that location, right? Eastern has a IP for their servers too. If I can't do it here, but normally in class I would bring that up. And it's like, here's Eastern's IP of where the website is. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, Hover, my website is at this location, right? Is at this IP location. And so we're going to go into your domain name that you've purchased, and then you're going to go to the DNS settings. And the first time you do this, it's to this day, I still find this a little bit intimidating. And sometimes I'll call Hover. You can actually call them on the phone and say, can you all do this for me? Here's the info. Can you all get it? Here's my login. Can you get this figured? Can you do this? And they will. Like, they're very, very helpful in that way, or they will at the very least walk you through this. And they have got me out of a couple of pickles that I've been in the past. So get that figured out. You're getting old when you use words like pickle. So off topic. All right, so what we want to do is we want to create this thing called an A record, okay? And what values do we put into this A record? There and there, and that's what we need to find out. So for every single place or location that you have your website, the directions are going to be different. What I want you to be able to do is understand this conceptually. So you can say, well, we don't use Hover, we use Namecheap, or we use GoDaddy, or we use don't use GoDaddy. Yes, I said that live on record. We use another registrar, and you're like, yeah, whatever, right? Because conceptually, it's all the same, okay? And your website might be hosted somewhere else. And what you want to be able to do is say, like, it doesn't matter. As long as I have a domain name, I understand these concepts, I can point my domain name to any location. All right, so if you don't want all of the call-in talk with this, right? If you CodePen has a nice screencast on this, and I can post a link to that, right? And Chris Coyier himself walks you through this process, right? So here's a video that you can play, and he walks you through this process, right? And so if you there's that reference. But for right now, I can do this. All right, we're going to go into settings. I'm sorry, deployment. Okay. And for right now, I just want you to watch this. Like, don't worry about following along this part. Okay. Just understand conceptually what we need to do. The first thing we need to do is serve up our website. And the first thing we need to do is make sure that our staging URL word, that's our staging one. That's not the one we want to give to employers. That's the one we want to give to grandma and our friends. This is the staging internal URL. So we're going to grab that. Okay. And now that we know that that's working, we want to go to custom domain. And the first thing you want to do is put in your custom domain. And CodePen actually makes this really, really easy. So I'm going to type in Manikoff.xyz. I'm going to go ahead and add that custom domain name. All right, so good. All right, and we're going to save those changes. And CodePen pops this thing down and says, hey, these are the records that you need to add. And for this class, for Web 1, all you need to know is you need to add in 2 A records. And if you care about A records versus all the other ones, so here's all the other different types of records, I will gladly talk about that. And if you want to talk about that after class or in office hours. But for right now, all we need is an A record, which is short for Apex. And then CodePen says the value you need to give it, right? The host value is that. Great. So I'm going to do that and go into hover. Let's see, put these two together. Right there. Okay, that's the host name that we're going to give it. And then we want to give it a value of that. Right. Good. And that is the first IP address, right? That is the location of where the CodePen website is. And then we're going to hit OK. Then we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to add another record. We're going to add in a second A record, and we're going to follow the instructions. Here is the host value for there. Check. And again, we don't want a CNAME record. We don't want a MX record, which is a mail record. We just want an A record. We're going to put in that is the host name. And the IP address, you'll notice, is slightly different. And so what happens is if a website gets called up and it doesn't get served, there's always a backup and a backup and a backup and a backup of that. And that just might be a second location. And a website's down when you run out of backups. And if I go on much longer, I start talking about all the technological foundations. But for our class, we just need to know URL structure, right? File and folder structure, and we'll be good. All right, so we're going to copy that and paste that into there. And what we're going to wait for is domain name propagation. Okay, so I'm going to hit save on this, and you might think, okay, it should work immediately. No. And even if it works for us right now, which it should break. All right, good. All right. So what's happening right now is all the domain name servers in the world are being told, hey, Manikoff.xyz is at a new location, and you need to update yourself. There's all these computers in the world right now that are being updated as I'm speaking to say, don't point to the old location, point to the new location, which is right here. Okay. And that takes time. And sometimes that takes up to 72 hours, but hopefully we'll see some changes by the end of class. And if not, I'll check it again on the weekend. Okay. All right. You can always tell a brand new designer, like, we're going to launch 1 minute after my birthday, 1 minute after the Super Bowl commercial. Right. And you're like, no. It takes time. Right. It takes time. All right. Good. All right. Throw up a thumb. All right. Excellent. React emoji. Okay. Thank you. All right. So there's that. And so we'll return to that. So we're done with hover for right now. We are done with, all right. So now we're going to get into CSS specificity. All right, like I said, I am the complement. I round out your lectures. I round out your homework. Okay, I'm not going to read to you your homework. Your homework's actually pretty good at introducing to you all of the, I guess, the inner workings of CSS. And what we're going to be taking a look at today specifically is CSS specificity. And specificity is just one of those things that we just have to learn. Right? It's how CSS works. It's very, very helpful. Okay. All right. That said, let's get into the Professor Pen from the course website. So go to the course website and click on the Professor Pen and get into there. And we're going to pin that tab. Okay. And we're going to deep dive into specificity. start should be this page right here. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is talk about different ways we can visualize specificity, because sometimes it's hard, right? Just this word itself is kind of weird. Right? This word is like, really? Specificity? It's extremely important to how this works, right? I'm looking at my spouse and she just rolled her eyes as soon as I said CSS specificity. It is one of those things. All right, don't fight it, just learn it. Don't fight it, just learn it. All right, so let's go ahead and be able to she's rolling her eyes for different reasons. All right, let's go ahead and begin to visualize it. That's probably the first place to start. So the first place I want to start is here, right? This is a great example. All right, so I'm gonna come into here and I'm gonna bring up the dev tools, and we'll talk about more and more about the dev tools later on. I like to kind of slowly leak it out. All right, this right here is all the files, right? This is basically everything for the Eastern website smashed into one file, and that's the first place to start with specificity. Okay. Now, where this lecture gets difficult is I have to introduce a lot of concepts to get to specificity. And the first one is the cascade. And the best way that I've been taught the cascade is you basically take all the style sheets and you smash them. You take all the style sheets and you smash them together. Say that 10 times fast. Take all the style sheets and smash them together. There you go. Okay. So we actually have done that. We did just that. This is our example of the cascade. We took normalize and we took styles.css, and both of these have to be applied, and that's the cascade. Okay, so everything in normalize is being applied, and everything inside of styles.css is being applied. And if I take it away, you can see how it changes a little bit. And that's what we're doing right here. So if I take all of these rules, okay, I'm gonna pop it into this visualizer. There's a lot of good visualizers. All right. So I'm going to reload this one from the start. All right. So right here, anytime there's a spike is a bad thing. Okay, that means, so here's an example one, right? So right now this website is running smoothly, right? The CSS is going okay. And then it goes, what is this, right? So your browser has to work extra hard to put that styling on, and your browser has to work extra hard to put this styling on. And this is part of the reason why you go to a website on your phones and it's just a white blank page. Why is that? Because it has to work extra hard to load this, and sometimes it doesn't get loaded. So if you're more of the coding type, this chart right here should sell it, right? And if you're not the programmer type, and this is, okay, so what, Colin? Well, optimization is everybody's problem, first off. But for non-designers, you want to be able to change any website. You want to be able to add your designs in. And so this addresses both audiences. This is those who love to code and those who love to design, right? This is fundamental to how this works. All right, so sorry, Eastern, I'm going to paste in your CSS, right? So everybody saw that chart, right? Good there? All right, watch what happens. This is how hard the browser has to work. All those spikes, boom, boom, boom. Every time this thing comes in, like I can't even move it fast enough. And what we're trying to do is get this line as low as possible and as flat as possible. And your browser will thank you for that, because it doesn't have to work hard to load your styling. And this is why we're doing this. Okay, so this is one way to visualize it. Okay. Here is another way to visualize it. Okay. And you can see here, I posted in that same chart. This will actually show you a lot of the repetitive things, all the unnecessary things, all of the duplicates, right? All of the ways that you can make your code run faster. Now, making code run faster is fine, right? But Colin, I'm not really into code optimization. I'm into more code readability. And both of these, I'm going to say it again, should be a selling point to everybody in class. All right, so we're done with that visualizer, right? Any questions on the visualizer? That's a no. All right. All right. We'll get to the Star Wars version of this. Okay. All right. Sorry, Eastern. I'm always picking on you. I know. Colin's always picking on me. All right. So now we want to see how the browser sees this. Okay. And we're going to be taking a look at this And as soon as you make a body element and you style it, right, specificity is being used. It has a score of 1. Yeah. So I got a little bit ahead of myself here, but the first thing that we need to understand is all of the style sheets that we write and all the style sheets that we don't write get smashed together. Okay. And then all of those stylings get inherited, right? So one of the things is brown eyes are dominant, right? My wife has beautiful hazel eyes, right? And my children have brown eyes because that's the dominant gene, and that's where specificity comes into play. Okay. So inheritance is like you inherited traits from both your parents, right? And which of the 2 traits that you got, right, is a part of the specificity. Okay. So thankfully they got her hair, right? Good. So that's another way to think about this. This is why we still have that parent-child relationship. Now, this isn't one of my metaphors. This is actually how this stuff all works. And so once we know that everything gets smashed together, right, and not everything will be inherited. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, let's go ahead and get the Master Professor pin, and let's, enough talking, Colin, make this thing happen. All right, so first we have our element selector. We're going to select the body here, and we're going to do a background of red. Okay, like the background is going to go to red. Excellent. This is topo file. As you saw with the CodePen, I mean, not the CodePen, the Eastern file, there's a lot to it, right? It was 3,400 lines of code, right? So you're human beings. So let's pretend this is near the bottom of your file, okay? And you would never do this, but you do this accidentally. Why? Because you're a human being, right? This makes complete sense. So I'm going to change the background from red to green. And what I want someone to yell out, is the background going to stay red or is it going to go to green? I'm going to type the letters green where the code is highlighted right there. And just logically, what do you think is going to happen to the page? Is this going to stay red or is it going to turn to green?
It will stay red.
What gets right? So it's great. This is perfect, right? So Blake, thank you for answering that. Now, Blake, I'm going to unpack for the rest of the class, right? So this is where everybody digs in to CSS specificity. Okay. Well, why is that the case? Well, so first off, this gets created first, right? And then this gets created last because it's red top to bottom. Now watch what happens when I flip flop these. Now red wins. Okay. So basically the last trait that gets inherited is the one that wins out. Now, Colin, this is really dry and boring. It is. Okay. Until you're my sister-in-law who calls me and she goes, I have spent a week trying to change the background color on this website to black. I said, just increase your specificity. She goes, what the heck is that? Right. And in 1 second, in a couple keystrokes, I fixed it. She goes, that took me a week. I go, because you were fighting specificity. You didn't bother to learn it. She goes, where do we learn this stuff? I'm not a professional web designer, right? She just had a website. I spent a week trying to change the color to black. I go, you should have called me earlier, right? Like we could have fixed this together. And my answer to her was specificity the whole time. I mean, well, my explanation was specificity each time. She goes, that doesn't make any sense. This is why we're learning this stuff. All right, so that's what you need to keep asking yourself. Why does it work that way? Well, what I want to show you here is what the browser is mad at, right? So the browser is mad at you right now, not because your background is so, all right. What's happening here is this: your browser is actually doing exactly what you told it to do, right? So if I select the body element, there you go, y'all. Right? Oh, I can't zoom in much further here. It doesn't work, right? At first, the background is being turned to, in this case, we flip-flop them, is being drawn as red, and then, right, green, and then red. Oh, what order do we have this now? All right, so first it drew green, so I'm going to refresh this, okay? It actually drew those colors, and then you're writing over it, right? And again, you're never going to do this intentionally, right? And so what's happening here is if you see how it's crossed out, it's actually applying that. And that's called being override. So something you need to write down right now is you're overwriting stuff. You're overwriting initial styling. And right now, the background, the browser did what you told it. I first painted it red and then I painted it again green. So why do you need to know specificity? Because you never do this in real life. In real life, you go, you know what? I want this wall to be red. But you know what I'm gonna do first? I'm gonna paint it green. Wait, then I'm going to paint it red. That's ridiculous, correct? So why do we do this in CSS? Right? And one, right? This, you don't want to do this because it's hard, right? It's extra work. Two, like it slows down the browser for no reason. Okay. So anytime you're like, why do I need to learn specificity, Colin? Ask yourself about painting a wall. You wouldn't paint it one color and then paint it over another color. Okay. So this is what's happening here with a lot of websites. And I look at it and I just get sad. I'm like, why are we doing this? There's no reason for this. Okay. All right. So still with me? We good? All right. There is our overview. Okay. We understand cascade, inheriting, and points. Throw up a reaction, please. Right. Overview. All right. I've spent 20 minutes trying to explain to you why you need to learn this. And that's what we're getting at right now. Okay. All right. So now we can actually begin to break this down. All right. So right here, your Codecademy teaches you to inline styling, and then it says don't use it. That's perfect. Right. Learn this stuff, then don't use it. Okay. Let's talk about inline styling. Okay. Let's go ahead and make some text. First off, we got a heading here. Okay. And this could be your name, my name, your name, a name. How about my first name? I don't use my first name much here. All right. So we have some styling here. Maybe this is probably be an H3, right? Let's say your name shows up, or you have a heading. Okay. Oh, that wouldn't make much sense here semantically. Here is a heading. I know, Colin, make up your mind. Okay, here is a heading. And say you want to style this. And so there's a lot of old ways of doing this. And this is what I want you to avoid here is like, look, to style this, I'm just going to come in here and use a style attribute. And this is called inline styling. All right. So this is the one time I show you how to do this and then say, I don't ever want to see this again. Okay. Not just for me, but for the browser's sake and for everybody else in your team. This is one of those code smells. When your code smells stinky, someone looks at your code and goes, yeah, you're new to this. Okay. You want to avoid inline styling. Right. That's why my notes say it. Right. And then we're going to change the color to red here. And you can change the color to red, and your design team says, hey, you know, that other heading, another heading here, how about you make that thing green or blue? You're like, cool, blue. All right, now there's a designer doing this. Let's pretend that you have another heading, even another heading. All right. And you're like, make that green. And I'm like, oh, fine. All right, fine. I'm going to make it blue, red, green. And your design team says, you know what? Let's change the color palette entirely. And that's when you get sad as a designer. And I don't want that to happen to you, because why? You're like, oh my gosh, I have to go back and change all of these? Yes, right? Because inline styling applies only to the element that it is applied to. There's no other easier way to say this, because this is closest to the content. This is all CSS right here. It's applied to this closest. And if you wanted to make all of, yes, you can find and replace, but that's problematic. We've all done find and replace, and it didn't do exactly as we thought. Okay. So the other thing here is, now you're going to do this for every single element that might exist in your website. Have fun, right? This is what we want to avoid. All right. So throw up a React emoji. I taught you how to do inline styling. Never do it again. Avoid at all costs. Okay. So this is in line with the elements. All right. And again, all these examples, you can refer back to the course website down here at the bottom, right? I'm not going to rehash some of these. I'm just going to kind of show you the progression here. All right, so there's that. Now we have internal styling. So we're going to have 3 H3s. So let's go put our H3s back. Okay, a good code pen trick, if you hold down the command key, you can do multiple cursors like this, change them in multiple spots. So now I'm typing on multiple lines, and then you hit the escape key to relieve multiple cursors, and you can just type on one line. Good tips and tricks there. All right, we're going to make an H3 times 3, and we're going to have a heading 1, 2, and 3. All right, so we have heading 1, 2, and 3 in there. Now we're going to use internal styling. So we're doing inline, and we say no. And internal is just as bad. So inline is to the individual element. Inline is to the individual element. Internal, okay? And inline, right, is to the individual page, which also defeats the purpose of CSS. When you change CSS, you want it to apply to the entire website, not to the web page. How many web pages does a website have? What's the number? Exactly. Too many to count. You want to make that change once and say, I'm going to lunch. Now, don't be that person who says, I'm going to do this for each individual page. All right, again, I'm going to show you one time how to do this. Never do this again. Okay, I'm going to show you one time how to do this. I'm going to keep picking on them. Sorry, y'all. I love y'all. You should come see me. Let's set up a Zoom meeting. My friends work on this team, right? Inline styling, and some of this is outside of their control. So right here is inline styling, right? All of this styling right here only applies to the home page and only the home page and nowhere else. So if they wanted to have this smart table styling again, the smartboard table, they're going to have to copy and paste it and put it to another page, right? So they're making that change twice in 2 locations. What if you have 20 locations? What if you have 200 locations? Don't be that designer, okay? All right, where are we at? So internal styling now. Now we're going to use CSS selector. So now we want to select all the H3s, okay? So, and then we're going to use our CSS syntax, which is left curly, right curly. And you think of these curly braces as fences, they're blocks. So only the styling exists inside of there. And so this is the structure for CSS. This would be a property. And then colon is the syntax, and value is what we have here. And this is just like our tag attribute value inside of CSS. HTML has a sentence structure, and CSS has basically a sentence structure. And so all we're doing is just replacing this, okay? So what selector do we want to change? H3, great. What do we want to change about H3? We want to change the color, great. We want to change about the color. We're going to make it red. And now they're all going to be red. Okay. So this is fine until what? Until your design team says, hey, can you make the H3s on the other pages red? And you're like, oh, now I have to copy and paste this and put it to all of my sites. And that's not what we want. Okay. We want to be able to make that change programmatically. So I'm going to do just that, right? Here is our page. Okay. There's our home page and our contact page, right? Home and contact, right? And if I come into the home page and use the internal method, okay, I'm gonna use the style element, right? So one that's kind of confusing, right? You're using HTML, and inside of HTML, you're gonna put CSS. Let that sink in for a second, right? You want to keep everything separate. You keep CSS and CSS files, keep HTML and HTML files. Okay, keep everything separate. And so now I'm picking the H1 and I'm making the color red, right? And on the contact page. But watch what happens when I go back to the home page. It doesn't know it exists, right? And so to make it red again, I have to copy this and then put it back on the home page. And you're like, oh, fine, it worked, Colin. And that's that's something I need y'all to let go. Well, it just works. Okay. Every time I hear it just works, it just feels kind of lazy to me, right? And you're not thinking ahead. Believe me, like the headaches that you do the work up front to save yourself headaches in the future. Okay. I would have a lot more friends if I wrote better code early on in a project. Okay. Don't waste your time. Do it right the first time and you'll be thankful. You're going to be one of those, like, I want you to be the intern that says, I'm going to lunch. Okay. So now this is working, right? Index is working and contact is working and they're both red. And then what if your design team says, well, now make it green? You're like, okay, now I have to go into index and make this thing green. Colin, you're really belaboring this point. Yeah, I'm doing. If you're absolutely bored right now, good, because this is not the way to do it, right? So now they're both green. Okay, great. Now make it blue, right? As a designer, you want to be able to iterate quickly. This is not iterative, and it's not fast. All right, so there is internal styling. Any questions on internal? Emoji, all right, good. All right, thanks. All right, Cal and Blake, thank you, thank you. All right, so now the other thing here is this is gross. This is subjectively Colin's opinion of gross. Like, why are we putting CSS is beautiful? Why are we putting it inside of HTML? HTML is beautiful. Why is it being mucked up and polluted with CSS? So what we want to do is keep these things separate. And that's the last thing that we need to see here is we want to go to external styling. External. Okay. So this is CSS because HTML doesn't understand curly braces. Watch what happens when I paste it into here. It's like, I don't know what you just did there, but I'm going to put it on the screen. That's why HTML is awesome. HTML says, even though I don't understand it, I'm going to put it on the page. Okay. So it just sees this as plain text. So what we want to do is now is get rid of the style element. Okay. And we want to take this, and CodePen says to have external styling, we have another panel for you, just like that. So now everything is going to turn to red. So now your design team says, hey, make this thing cornflower blue. You're like, all right, I'm going to lunch. That's one change, one time, all done. How many pages are going to be cornflower blue now? All of them, right? And you come back from lunch and your design director says, you know, we should have it be yellow, green. Like, cool, I'm going back to lunch, right? That's what we want. We're not trying to make this change one time in one location. We're trying to make this change one time in all the locations, in every instance of that H3. Right? And that's the value of all this. All right, so we can do the same thing right here. Okay, so now we're applying it again. This our pens are our practice, right? Practice, understand it, and now we're gonna actually apply this. So now I'm gonna cut out that H1, and I'm gonna get rid of the style element. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing for contact. Again, just make sure you're following along here. You don't need to make these changes. Again, you can always see my code. Now we're gonna go into styles.css, and that's where we're gonna paste it in. And without even looking at the index, without even looking at contact.html, right? I know that it's green. My expectation is that it's green. And if I take a look at it, boom, it's green. And if you want to make it, right? Again, we're pretending that we have 2,000 pages, right? We pretend like we have 20,000 pages, right? And you want to make it yellow and hit save, and everything's going to go to yellow. And the expectation is all the H1s are going to be yellow, and which in this case they are. All right, we're good on external styling because this is going to lead into specificity. That's where we got to dig in here. Okay. All right. I'm trying to do 2 lectures at once here, so you got a whole. So we're done with the project part. Okay. We're going to be spending all the rest of the time in the pen to make sure that we understand this. Okay. All right. I'm going to go as fast as I can because I'm getting hungry and my ears are burning from my 6th hour of talking here. All right. Let's do this. All right, so now that we've established inline, internal, and external, and we've established that we only want to do external, all right, now we're going to see how specificity comes into play. Okay, so we can do this with any element we want. All right, so first off, we have our basic selector. So if I go P tab, a paragraph, and I go lorem tab, okay, so P tab, lorem tab, okay, great name for a child, by the way, lorem. But no one, has anybody, no, all right, I won't go. I won't lecture about that. All right, so P tab, lorem tab. Okay, I'll be doing this a lot. All right, you got this paragraph here, and you're going to have multiple paragraphs. Okay. Let's start with one. Let's just start with one. Okay. All right, we have the specificity thing called the specificity score. Okay. And you can visualize this score in a couple of different ways. The link I gave to you was the CSS tricks. Sorry, I linked to it. This is an old chart, but I still like it. I think it gets the point across. Sorry, I have it on my screen and I have too many windows and I gotta put it back in the window. We don't care about this. All right. All right. So what we're looking at right here is the specificity score. this will work. Kinda. I should just search for it right here. Whoa. Specific city. That's how I remember it. Okay. Let's see how old this is. I'm going to give up on this chart here if I can't find it. Anyhow, here, I'll zoom in on this. All right, so specificity is scored 0 to 1,000. Right, there's a score for every CSS selector, and what we're scoring are CSS selectors. Right, sorry for wasting your time there for a few minutes looking for the page, but I'll bring it up later. All right, so if we use inline styling, it's always going to win. Right, and it has a specificity score of 1,000. Right, and so what we're looking at is the actual selectors. Okay, so let's do just that. Okay, so the score is not 10 based, like you don't add them together, right? It's kind of visually, it's a visual scoring system. Okay, and you're scoring the CSS selector. So we have our selector, left curly, right curly, and then we have our properties, which what is inherited, and then the value. Okay. All right, so first off, what's our selector? What's the element that we want to select? In this case, it's going to be our paragraph. Okay. And what property we want to change about this thing, color, and we're going to do other properties later on, and then this thing is going to be red. And so what you're scoring is this right here, everything in front of that first curly brace. Yeah. And what we're saying here is this is inline styling, this right here is IDs, and this is classes, and these are the actual elements. Now, just let this sink in for right now, because we haven't done IDs and we haven't done classes or pseudo classes. Right? We haven't done attributes and all those other things. And well, like I say in the class notes here is and so much more. I'm just laying the foundations for and so much more. Okay. So you're just counting this. How many elements are left? In this case, it's 1. Okay. And it reads left to right. So the inline styling right now is 0 because we don't have any inline styling. Do we have any pound signs? 0, right? Do we have any dots or colons? 0, right? You're just counting dots. Do we have what elements are left? In this case, just 1 element. And that's what this means. This has a specificity score of 1. All right, so if we come into here and do what I told you not to do and use inline styling, this is going to have a specificity score of 1,000, and 1,000 is the biggest. So if we make this color green, it's always going to be green, right? We can be, whatever we type here, it basically says, hey, your style sheet, you might as well throw it out because it's useless, right? Because this is always going to win. So this right here, inline styling has a specificity score of 1 because it has, right? And of course is the max. So that's where there's commas there. It's always going to win. So there's a generator here, right? A very helpful generator. I didn't have this when I was learning this stuff. Very, very helpful. All right, so we can start out with the HTML, right? And that has a specificity score of 1, right? Even our paragraph has a specificity score of 1 because it's only 1 paragraph, okay? Good? Everybody clear in the scoring so far? Check, check with me? All right. So we know not to do this, so we're going to get rid of this because this defeats the purpose of all this. So that'll apply to not only 1 paragraph, but all the paragraphs. So we're going to copy this and paste that. Now we have 3 paragraphs that we want to have, that we want to make them all red. Okay, we're going to come in here and make them Rebecca purple, right? And they're all going to turn to Rebecca purple. All right, so now I'm going to take that same specificity score, right? And I'm going to say, I'm going to use what's called descendant selection, right? And descendant, again, we're using the selectors here. And descendant selection says, list out the parent, not just the child, right? So in this case, we want to change the paragraph, right? Which is using the P tag inside of the paragraph element, right? You're using the P tag inside of the paragraph element because P is short for paragraph in this case, right? And who is its parent? As we discovered in last class, body is the parent. So what we're saying right now is, whoops, I can't zoom in, is start with the parent and do space. So this is where spaces matter. Spaces matter. Okay, so we're saying start with the body and make the parent and make the paragraph piece. So now our specificity score, if anybody want to yell it out, what is our specificity score there? How many elements are in this selector that I have highlighted?
2.
2. All right, whoever said that, thanks. Oh, wait, good. It was in Nick or Blake. They both flashed. Thank you. All right, so if I change this, all right, so before I change this color to yellow, right, logically, right, is it going to be purple or yellow? Yell it out. Hit space bar and chime in. Hit space bar and chime in. Purple or yellow? What was that?
Yellow?
Yellow.
I was going to guess yellow because the specificity was higher.
Perfect. There you go. You're all understanding specificity. Now, Colin, what happens if I do what you did at the beginning of class, right? This is where I'm going to prove Colin wrong. I'm going to put my Rebecca Purple last, right? Because at the beginning of the lecture, you said that the last rule wins. Why is it still yellow? Because the specificity score is higher. So the only way that the last rule wins if the specificity score is exactly the same. That is the tiebreaker. So in this case, both of these are now 2. Okay. And again, you have this awesome generator that I wish I had as a young lad that would actually fill that in for you and says, look, my score is of 2. And the score down here of just the paragraphs is 1. 2 is bigger than 1. That's why that selector wins out. That's why this rule will win out. And we can visually see this, okay? And I also visually can visualize people's eyes rolling right now. Hang in there, right? I've given this lecture in person. It's my favorite, and I know it's not one of yours, but hang in, right? This is what the browser is doing. It first made it yellow, then he said, oops, designer changed their mind, right? I first painted it yellow, and then they came back and they changed the specificity and they made it purple again. All right, so there is the selector score. Now what you can do is try to avoid this, right? So what this is saying is start at the parent, which is HTML, right? And we then go down to the body and then go down to the paragraph. And what you're doing here is you're listing out every single, so if I asked you who is in your family, your response probably isn't gonna be, well, my great-great-grandparents were this, and then my parents were this, and then my siblings were this, right? You don't start there. Okay. And that's what this is. So now our specificity score is 3. So why am I saying this? Because what happens is people panic, right? And they go, well, if I just list out every single element, right, I'm going to win out. So if you want to change this to purple, right, this is probably not a good solution to keep increasing the score. Okay. And so this is something that I need you to be aware of here, is don't just keep throwing elements at this, right? Because why? We're going to see how no matter what, you can have 100, right? You can put this inside of a div, inside of a div, inside of a div, inside of a div, and you can have the specificity score be 3,000 or 30,000. And what I'm going to show you next always wins out. And then I'm going to show you something that beats that out. And then I'm going to show you something that negates all of this, right? And what we want to do is understand these rules so we're not stuck, right, for a week trying to change the background color on the website. Okay. Understand these rules. All right, so we have these. Okay, so now we have a specificity score of 3. So now you have this first paragraph, right? And you want to use this attribute of class. Now you have multiple classes. There are multiple tax classes. There are multiple, you have multiple course classes. You have multiple animal classes. So a good way to use a class, okay, is anything that you want to repeat. So we're going to make a class here of highlight, right? And we're going to abbreviate this as HL, just going to make this thing easy. And we're going to come into here and we're going to make an HTML selector of dot. So the dot syntax references the class attribute. The dot syntax references a class attribute. Third time, dot syntax references a class attribute. And then now once we reference that class attribute, we can take the value. In this case, it's just going to be HL, not H1, HL for highlight. And we're going to make the background yellow, okay, or yellow-green. Okay. All right, so now that we've created this Lego piece here of dot HL. And now if we went to and we made another element like the H1, this is going to be our page name. we can reuse that Lego piece of class. Okay, we're going to reuse that Lego piece of HL, and this is great. All right, now that the Lego piece of HL is going to make the background all yellow green. So now we're going to come into HL, all right, and we're going to change the color of the text of the paragraph, right, to that red again. Why did it turn red? Why didn't it stay purple? So now this is where people get mad at CSS, and I think this is unfair. CSS says, look, we have these rules because browsers are complicated. Okay. He says, no, I just wanted this. I didn't want them all to turn red. How come they all didn't turn red? How come only some of them turned red? Well, it's because this Lego piece, this class, is being applied there. So if I remove it, right, that's inheritance. Okay. So what's happening here is if I save this and take a look at it, this first paragraph is red because it started out with a yellow color, right? So if I turn off that color red, it started out yellow, right? Then it went to Rebecca purple. Then it finally went to red. And your browser repainted that text 3 times. Okay, that's the inheritance part. There's always something that has a higher specificity. So we can score this real fast. Okay, so we can just cheat. One of the ways we can not cheat, we can use our generator here. We can paste that in there. .1 has a score of 10, right? So what we're looking at here is this column right here. Any dots and colons have a score of 1, and you're just counting syntax, okay? So the score of .l gives us a score of, there's no inline styling, there's no pound signs in the selector, there is 1 dot, okay? And is there any elements left? Nope, right? Because the HL is attached to that. So why is this text red and not purple? Simple, right? This has a higher specificity score. 10 is bigger than 3, right? Visual equivalent of 10 is bigger than the visual equivalent of 3. Even if we come in here and overload this, right? We can keep putting a million elements in front of this and have this score be 30. It's never going to win, right? We good? This is a weighted system. Okay, and that's the thing that gets to people is like, well, why is this a weighted system? All right, I need someone else to yell out this score. We have a class of H1, right? We have a class of HL, excuse me, that is attached to the H1, and we can reference both of those, right? So I'm going to put H1.HL, and can anybody tell me what the new score is going to be now? Oh, those look, oh, I'm sorry, y'all. That is a bad class name. Here, I'm going to do this so it's, I'm just going to write highlight because the H and the L look exact. The H and the L, the 1 and the L look very, very similar. So my bad. Highlight, class highlight, class highlight. Good. All right. So notice that the first one is no longer. Okay. All right. So if I type in P highlight, okay, what's the specificity score now? Notice that the H1 no longer gets that because why? We're making it more specific. What's the score now? I told you we're going to go long because we missed lecture. Count the syntax.
Is it 11?
Perfect. All right. Whoever said that? Kayla? Nice. Okay. That's it. 11 is bigger than 3. Okay. So this happens to a lot of designers. Okay. And it's okay. This happens, right? You have this class of highlight that you reuse over and over again. You're like, I want this thing to be blue. It's never going to be blue because, right? This is never going to be blue because it has a higher specificity. This is going to be blue because it has a lower specificity. Okay, and as we can see here, this thing is being overridden. And if you get this and it makes complete sense, like I would just say hang in there. Okay? I know that if like, okay, Colin, I get it. Like, just kind of hang in there because we're gonna do the nuke Death Star on this in just a bit. I use Death Star appropriately because we're going to talk about it. All right. Lastly, we have IDs. All right. So how many IDs do you have? Well, I have lots of IDs, Colin. You only have one type of ID. How many driver's licenses should you have? You should only have one, I guess, unless you have a fake ID. Ooh, I should ask the class who has a fake ID. All right, don't tell me that. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. All right, how many social security numbers do you have? One. Right? That's one type of ID. How many student cards do you have? Just one. And that's what we like about IDs. All right, so we're going to put an ID here. All right, and we're going to call this thing unique. And you're going to use IDs sparingly. Okay, because IDs, as we saw in that specificity graph, are a lot of work. And you want to use an ID for things that are truly unique. Like what is actually really unique about this piece. Okay. And so we're going to come into here and we're going the pound sign references the ID attribute. This is my monotonous third time. Pound sign references the ID attribute. ID attribute references the pound sign. And we're going to give this value of unique. And we can do stuff like change the font style. So FS tab for font style. We can make it italic. And so now only this, all right, we can even do font style italic. I'm just trying to make this thing pop out. Text. Make this thing text align center. All right, so now it's text align center and it's italicized. And if we were to make another H1, right? So we're going to use our imaginations and pretend this is on a different part of the page here, right? Another page here, it's not going to have that styling because it doesn't have those Lego pieces. Okay, unless, all right. So avoid this. So what I'm going to show you here is your browser being forgiving of you. Right, this right here is something you should avoid. We have something called ID of unique, and yet we're going to reuse it. You're going to have something called an ID of lead, your lead story. You're going to have something ID of announcement. Okay, and so your browser is making its best attempt. Your browser going, oh, that's nice. I know they meant class. Okay, so this is basically you having a fake ID. Okay? You're like having another social security card or having another student card. So if it's unique, right, use it once. All right, let's score this real fast. We're just counting syntax. Okay? So now that we've done that, we know that we shouldn't do this. All right, score. Let's go. No inline styling is 0. How many pound signs are here? 1. We're going to make this fast. And how many dots? There are no dots or colons, comma. How many elements are left? None. And a good way to do this is copy this, paste it into our selector, right, if you need help. And this tells us that this ID is of 1. Okay. And all right. So the last thing I want to talk before I talk about the last thing you should never do. Now, are there any questions on elements, classes, and IDs? Nope. All right, we're all good. Okay. The best way to do this is to use our blank page with a background color. All right. So there is the Death Star equivalent. So the great Andy Clark first came up, like when he was, this is the updated version of specificity. And he made this great chart, right? So if you don't want to use the CSS specificity, right, Colin, you're not making any sense today, right? There's lots and lots of charts, and here's one of them. Okay, so one stormtrooper is worth is basically an element, right? Score of 1. Well, 2 stormtroopers can be 1 stormtrooper. Well, 1 Sith Lord, right, can be 100 stormtroopers or 1,000,000 stormtroopers, right? My son's watching me; he loves this part. Okay. So Vader is an ID, right? Vader can take multiple Sith Lords, right? Because he can, right? I'm reading the Vader comics right now. Believe me, Vader can take anybody. Anybody read the Vader comics? Oh, they're so good. Y'all should read it. Yeah, like Vader down is amazing. All right. So, right, he's an ID. Okay. So then, okay, you get the style attribute, right? And you no spoilers, even though, right, Senator Palpatine there, right, is the style attribute, he's always going to win out, right? This is a higher order of magnitude. Now we're going to show you the Death Star, right, about why you shouldn't do this. And too many websites, anytime you do this, right, it's like, ooh, I really, really have lost control of specificity. So if we select the body here, and we're going to make this background of red, and this is where we're going to end lecture here, or a different color here, cornflower blue. Okay. So somewhere else inside of a page, someone says like my specificity is not going to win out. So inside of this body element, I'm going to have here a class. Yeah, I'm going to make a class here, and this class is going to have a class of home. All right. So maybe this is the home page. And we know from this long-winded lecture, I know it's all right, that this score is 1, right? We can even paste it in here if we're unsure. All right, so can anybody give me the score of the class of home? We're going to use .home to reference this. Okay. Yell it out, hit space bar, yell something. Let me know you're still here.
10.
10, thank you. All right. So this has 10 is bigger than 1. All right. So somebody thinking, well, nuts to this, Colin. I went to this website called W3 Schools, and it told me use exclamation point important. I went to Stack Overflow, or I just Googled randomly for like how to defeat a specificity. And Stack Overflow is awesome, right? But what I want you to be able to do is take a look at all these solutions, right, and be able to evaluate them. Right. I'm gonna go somewhere with this. Okay. And you're like, hey, ooh, look at this, right? That's a really good example. And I said, just use exclamation point important and forget all that, right? And so this is the first thing I did. I mean, I told my sister-in-law, I go, well, you know, you can use this hack called exclamation point in important, right? And it'll win. And she says, oh my God, why didn't you just tell me that initially? I go, well, you have to apply it for every single declaration. She goes, so? Well, let's think about this for a second. You have to apply it to every single declaration. So if I come into here and I make a paragraph and I call it Lorem, I'm just going to do this twice. I don't want to do this twice, let alone 20, right? Let alone 200, 2,000, 2 million. I don't want to do this twice, right? So inside of here, right, we have a plain old paragraph and we selected it, right? And it's being attached to the body. Okay, so we have a class of home and it's being attached to the body, right? We're going to make the font style, right? Let's make it a serif font because designers don't use enough serif fonts. Okay. Did I spell that right? Font, is it font style, font family? All right. So we got this thing, font family of serif. That's great. And someone says, well, I want to make this thing the dreaded Comic Sans, right? Let's see if I can spell this thing. And that's not, oh, Papyrus, that's the worst one. Comic Sans is not as bad as Papyrus. Papyrus. Is that going to work? Great. Let me comment this line out to make sure that Papyrus works. Good. All right. Side note, I drove through Oregon last summer and Papyrus, Southern Oregon. Papyrus is everywhere. If you're from Southern Oregon, I want to know why Papyrus is everywhere. I want to know. I saw it everywhere. All right. So we have a font family and you're like, hey, I want Papyrus to win out, right? So your design team says, you know what, Papyrus is going to make a comeback. Papyrus is the font of choice for Southern Oregon, for this Oregon coast. We want Papyrus to win out. But what do you have to do to make this thing, to make that declaration win out? You're going to ignore specificity altogether. Well, you have to do exclamation point important. Right? You're basically saying, hey, every time you do exclamation point, all you're saying to me is nuts to this, Colin. I don't care about this. I don't care about this. I'm going to apply exclamation point important to every single property that I want to change. Every single, you're basically saying every word in the CSS dictionary, I'm going to append exclamation point important. And that's why it's the Death Star, right? Yeah, it works, but it gets rid of everything else. Okay, so avoid this at all costs because I didn't want to do this for two properties. We're going to have lots and lots and lots of properties that we want to change. So say you want to change the color of the text, right? Up here, right? I'm going to do this a third time. I thought you said you want to do this. And I want it to be white instead, right? And he's like, no, I want to make it red and blue. Well, what do you have to do to this line? Someone say it so we can go home.
Important.
There you go. Thank you, Kayla. All right, exclamation point. And that's it. Have a good weekend, y'all. Thank you for sitting through 2 lectures. Okay, I'm going to stop recording here. Ooh, I'm winded. All right. Any last minute questions?
Hey, Colin, I was wondering if you could show
Yeah.
me how you put your new domain name on your project on CodePen.
Even better. I'm going to give you a different voice. How's that?
Cool.
CodePen custom domain. And Chris Coyer himself is going to walk you through this process, and I'll paste it right into the chat.
Thank you.
As soon as I figure out how the chat works.
You just put in the Zoom chat.
That's a great place. Now we have to find the Zoom chat. Oh wow, it's hidden. There it is.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. What's your domain name, by the way?
It's the name of my YouTube channel. It's Shake and Blake.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Shake and Blake. That's a good one. What's
Thank
on
you.
your YouTube channel?
Yep.
No, what's on your YouTube channel?
It's motorcycle stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I know nothing.
Neither does my girlfriend, but she still watches it because she's sweet.
Oh, that's kind. Yeah.
All right. Hey, thanks. Have a good weekend.
You too. All right, y'all. Y'all have to exit so this video can record, or what's it called? Not record.